Hello, and welcome to Legislative Update. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television, and it's our great pleasure to have with us today Representative Jim Boyd. Representative Boyd, thank you very much for being here, sir, and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about some of the upcoming legislation and legislative updates that are going to be happening. You're on your way back to Tallahassee?
Yeah, and thanks again, Charles, for having me. I always value it as a pleasure to be here and chat with you and let our viewers know hopefully what they can expect this year. So thanks for taking time to do this. Yeah, we leave Monday for Tallahassee. Tuesday morning at 9:30, we gavel in and open the 2016 session. As you know, this year it's a little bit early. We're going in January and February instead of March and April this year. So we gavel in Tuesday the 11th, and we will sine die all things going the way we plan. I believe it's March 11th.
Well, but you've been very busy up to now because you've been full of doing a lot of committees during the fall. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, that is correct. This past year, we talked about it, I think, last time we were together, but it's been kind of the legislature that doesn't stop. We, went in January of 2015 for committees, and then in March we started session. Then we had as you know, we had a special session 1,
Exactly.
we had a special session 2, and special session 3,
Exactly.
which finished the end of the summer. And then in September, we started committees, a couple weeks in September, a couple weeks in October, a couple weeks in November, 1 week in December, and now we're back for the start of the 2016 session. So yeah, it's been a lot of back and forth over the past year.
And the special sessions too. There was the redistricting one, which is a serious issue that has hopefully come to some kind of conclusion. But over the last few months, you've certainly kept busy, not only being in Tallahassee, but also here in your district as well.
That's correct. And what we all try to remember is we serve the constituents of our district. So while we're in Tallahassee, and this was an unusual year in terms of our time up there, most of us have done the math, and literally we spent more time in Tallahassee than we did in our districts this year. But that was very unusual. And we like to be back, A, at home with our families and friends, but B, in our districts where our constituents are, and we can interact with them and find out what's important to them. So we've been able to do that. We back and forth. We've had time this year to visit with folks in our communities and try to find out what's important to them. And over the past couple of weeks, we've been doing that here in preparation for next week.
And I must point out, Representative, that recently you were involved with the fire district here and the EMS rescue, doing a presentation on behalf of getting the Narcan to EMS, which was a wonderful thing to do, considering the epidemic of heroin overdoses that has occurred in this county. So tell us briefly a little bit about your involvement with that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That is, I hope, is going to be a life-saving measure that we were able to help with here in Manatee County. The epidemic is just horrific. We've all got family or friends that have been affected by it, and while the numbers over the past month or so have been down a little bit, it's Manatee County, unfortunately, was like the epicenter in the state of Florida for heroin overdoses. So this drug, Narcan or naloxone, I think is the technical name,
Correct.
is the quick reversal that reverses the effects of the opioid, and by the generosity of a company, Kaleo, who manufactures the drug, I found out they had some interest in donating dosages to communities. And so I talked to them, and they had done something in Sarasota recently, and I said, well, would we be able to enjoy the same in Manatee County? And through some conversation, we were able to do that. We worked with the fire rescue community, And as you know, this week you all were out there and helped cover it. We were able to deliver, I think it's 100 packages, which
Right.
is 2 doses per pack.
Right.
So hopefully every fire rescue unit in the county will at least be able to have a dose pack on. So if they get to a situation
Overdose.
where it's an overdose, they can immediately use that, get the person breathing again, and start to reverse the effect while they are getting the patient to the hospital.
Well, congratulations, sir, for reaching out and doing that because of the epidemic. Those Narcan patches or applications are saving lives, and congratulations for reaching out to the company, and congratulations to them for providing this to Manatee County citizens.
Yeah, it was very, very generous. I couldn't thank them enough for, it's probably $85,000 of retail value. Now, obviously, they
Right.
wouldn't cost them that, but still, it's a very generous donation, and we're thrilled to at least have that as one more tool in our toolbox to help this problem.
And sir, as because you continue to play a great role in the community, but as you go to Tallahassee, you're looking at statewide issues, things that are going to be affecting all of the counties throughout the state. And there's several big issue items that are on the table, and one of those is the new water policy. And this is a major thing that's going to affect the entire state of Florida. Tell us a little bit about the big picture of what the water policy is going to be, what you're going to be talking about.
Sure, and in fact, that will be a bill that comes up the first week of session in both the House and the Senate, and we both expect to pass it out of our chambers and get it to the governor for his signature. Very similar to last year's bill that didn't quite get across the finish line at the end of the session.
Right.
But it is a very comprehensive water policy that deals, from the tip of the Panhandle to the Florida Keys, and everything's from streams and lagoons and waterways and rivers, the Everglades, water facility management and improvement. So it's a very comprehensive bill that kind of addresses all components of water, and for obvious reasons and a variety of reasons, water is critical to
State of Florida.
Our state, yes.
And one of the key things about the new water policy is that's going to set standards and policies throughout the state, where perhaps in the past it's been kind of patchwork.
That's correct. It does some standards and some measurables and some absolute funding requirements in some areas that will be good for all of Florida.
And hopefully when you'll be able to do our update, you can give us an update on how that legislation came through.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
But another key element, and I've heard you talk about this on several different occasions, is on education. This year they expect more funding for education in a variety of different manners, specifically K through 12, and they're talking about record-setting per pupil funding. Where do you see that going? Give us your impression of well, first of all, how important the education funding is, and secondly, where do you see it progressing?
First of all, education funding is critical to our state and to our communities and frankly, to our economy. If we don't have world-class education, outsiders that might want to move here maybe would look elsewhere, and then those that do live here are maybe looking at other areas or other states or other opportunities for their education, or their kids' education. So this year, last year we had very good and very high levels of funding. This year we hope it will be, as you said, record funding, and I feel very good about it. The House is engaged, the Senate is engaged, and the governor is definitely engaged on it. And I think that's another area that we're all going to be very cooperative together to try to accomplish. It's a key priority for all branches of our state government, and it's something that I think we all realize the need for, and we're going to be very supportive.
And another key element, sir, it would take a few moments as well, is that recently State College of Florida, University of South Florida, New College, Ringling Design, they came together and created this C4, which is a consortium of all the college where kids will be able to take a class at New College if they're enrolled at SCF, which is a unique and kind of innovative way of utilizing the best of resources throughout this university town, so to speak. But tell us, some of the key things that you're looking to do for higher education.
That's a very good point. I'm no education expert by any stretch, but when I first got in the legislature, and by the way, I'm not taking credit for what they've done because they've worked very, very well together and collaborated in doing the right thing for students. But I asked questions both here and in Tallahassee why are we, why are we overlapping each other? Why are we competing for the same students?
Right.
Why are we competing even for the same programs in certain areas? So where we can work together and, this college supports this initiative, this one, that, we overlap and educate back and forth. It's just good for the community. And by the way, it's in many cases taxpayer dollars. So
Right.
we're not funding the same thing in a variety of institutions. So I take no credit for what's been accomplished. We at least had some dialogue and some conversation, and all credits due to our local university and college presidents, because they have really worked very hard together to make these things happen.
Well, not too long ago, sir, we were able to do the legislative delegations, public policy meeting at State College of Florida, and there was just a wide variety of individuals, including the college and universities, that said, well, we need you to look at this. We need this kind of funding. We want you to take a consideration of that. So as you go into session now, you've done your research and you've kind of finalized ways where funding is going to be put in place. Obviously, University of South Florida, State College of Florida, all of these are saying, we need additional funding for whatever their specific issue is. But there's only a limited amount of dollars to go around. So how do you remedy that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. If you can figure that out, you'd probably be
No, I'm not gonna
the most liked person in Tallahassee. But it is a balance, because not only do we have the education needs and requirements, we have mental health issues, we have
Right.
health
Well, that's
issues, we have law enforcement, there's so many competing interests in terms of the for the money that we have. All that said, I think there's a good way to to fund the things that we need to fund as government, and we've been working very hard at that. I know with respect to the local colleges, there have been some infrastructure needs that
Correct.
have been neglected. And last year before last, we got some monies for some. Last year we weren't quite as successful as it all ended up with the signed budget. But this year I feel good that we're going to be able to go back after some of those. So, this year this group may get a little more. Next year that
Right.
group may get a little more. But in the end, we're trying to be very fair and balance it out where we're really accomplishing the things that need to be accomplished.
And I would suggest to you, Representative Boyd, it's a constant thing of balancing. Well, we do this, we have to take something away from here. If we take something away from here, where do we put that? So, it's a gargantuan task to be able to put together that budget, and you have to do that by March. Is that correct?
Right. By the time we adjourn, we have to sign a budget. Now, and we're not like the federal government. We can't just we can't just borrow more money
Right.
to pay for services. So, but in Florida, constitutionally, we have to have a balanced budget at the end of session. That's the one thing, as we've talked about before, that we have to do constitutionally in session. In fact, that's the only thing we have to do. Obviously, we hope to accomplish a lot more, but it is quite a task. But people come together and compromise and
Exactly.
negotiate and collaborate, and in the end, usually it works out pretty well.
And no one is better than bringing people together than you are.
Thank you.
But one of the things that you just mentioned, and I'd like for you to take a few minutes to talk about it, is mental health issues. Recently, the Sarasota Herald Tribune ran a series of articles called the S Word, and it was all talking about the terrible tragedy of people with mental health not being able to get the services, the resources that they have. This year, one of the efforts is to try to fund some additional mental health needs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I hope we had a chamber breakfast this morning and talked to the chamber membership, and this came up there as well. And it is, I think by most measurements, we're way at the bottom of the 50 states in terms of funding for mental health. I am thrilled that my colleagues in the legislature and our local delegation support additional funding for mental health services. We've got some initiatives even here at Centerstone, or Cornerstone, I get that mixed. Centerstone. I always want to call it Manatee Glens, but we've got some initiatives that we're going to hope to help try to fund for them, as well as the broader issue across the state and initiatives that are going across the state. So mental health funding is, I think, going to be a priority this year. Again, it's at the end of the day, education, mental health, law enforcement, where do we spend the money? But I know I know mental health has been somewhat neglected over the past, although we've tried to do the right things. But I think a lot of people, it's been brought into their focus and their laser kind of focus on this issue this year, I think will really help.
Well, one of the things, sir, that I want you to take a few minutes to talk about is that the governor has suggested that he wants to do some additional tax cuts, which he said will stimulate the economy, specifically for small businesses and everything. Tell us a little bit about those tax cuts and the economic incentives as well, that this year are coming into view.
Sure. The governor, I think his original plan and his budget was $1 billion in tax cuts, and then $250 million into the Enterprise Florida Economic Incentive Fund. That's pretty aggressive.
Very.
I applaud him.
Very ambitious.
Yeah, it's very ambitious, and I applaud him for trying to, put money back in taxpayers' pockets where we believe they can spend it better. That said, I'm not sure that's exactly the amount that we funded. We're, working on our budget. The Senate, of course, is working on theirs.
Right.
I think where there will be a lot of consensus is, we will be cutting taxes in a variety of ways. One of the areas that we've tried and we need to keep at is the commercial lease tax. On the commercial leases, we're the only state in the country that still charges on commercial rental space. So. I don't know that, and that's a big number. I think that's a couple $2 billion of revenue. So I don't know that we can cut it all at one time, but my hope and anticipation is this year we'll be able to start kind of trimming that down a little bit. And over a period of maybe 4, 5, 6 years, we can eliminate that. I don't expect that will be eliminated overnight, but I think over time, everybody's in agreement that we need to eliminate that, as well as some of the sales tax holidays and a variety of other taxes that I think we can get at. Candidly, our House Tax Chairman, Chairman Gates, has not come out with the total House package yet, so we're waiting to see. But the appropriations team and those experts in those silos are working through those numbers now, and I'm sure we'll be seeing them soon in Tallahassee in terms of what we want to do compared to what the Senate wants to do, and then we'll try to work with the governor's office to do as much as we can.
Well, let me just follow up with that, if I may. The economic incentives, the governor has been very vocal about, trying to draw new businesses from around the country to Florida. The economic incentives, and Manatee County is very proactive in trying to reach out to new business. How important is that to have those economic incentives to develop new businesses?
I think it's critical. There is a little bit of a tension between various groups in our communities as to should government do this, should they not.
Right.
I believe for the right reasons, with the right accountability, transparency, and the ability to not pay until actually they've demonstrated their commitment to our state and it's working. I think, to a certain extent, it's the right thing to do. And we brought Hertz to, down south of us from their entire headquarters from New Jersey. Amazon has got some large facilities here, as well as a variety of other companies across the state. And so for the right reasons, with the right accountabilities, with the right clawbacks if they don't do what they've promised, I believe there's room for that.
And it's good for the state to have that, and it's good for each community to understand that these economic incentives can help them in each and every way that possible. More jobs, better homes, all of those things, better schools.
Right, exactly. I mean, it impacts everything. And so, and even existing businesses that are wanting to expand or have new ideas and they want to grow and hire more people in the community or expand in the community, I'm very interested in trying to help them where we can.
Well, one of the things, sir, and I'd like you to take a moment about, ever since you went into office, you've always been tasked with, great responsibilities. During your first term, you were like the insurance guru. You were the go-to person on that, and you helped develop the insurance policy changes that were a big part. And then last session, you were tasked with the responsibility of pension funds, was it? Or
that was session before last. Last session was Amendment 1.
And so you've been given these great responsibilities to do that. What are some of those things that you are being tasked with, and what are some of the committees that you're going to be serving on?
Well, this year, Charles, thank you, by the way, but this year I'm again Majority Whip. So I'm on the leadership team of our caucus.
Very important.
And that impacts everything from our caucus goals and the leadership and speakers goals to member goals and member bills that try to help them get them across the finish line. I'm vice chair of appropriations, which is
Very important.
a good committee to be on, and hopefully will translate into, my ability to help some of those projects that we talked about before. Also, Regulatory Affairs Committee I'm on, which is another interesting committee, and then Ag and Natural Resources. So I'm doing those
These
things.
are all kind of critical things that are good for the state, good for the communities that you do serve, but also, are great for developing policy for future benefits.
It's, I asked to be on Ag because Ag is so important to not just our state, but in our own community. The other committees I like to be on is when asked for a couple of them as well. So it's all, every committee up there is important. These are the areas where I think I've got a little more expertise and a little more knowledge, so hopefully I can have a little more impact.
And if I may say so, the House leadership has kind of recognized your leadership by giving you these great responsibilities, as the House Whip, and also, to chair these committees as well. But one thing I'd like you to take a few moments with, if you could, is the governor has just signed a compact, the new compact, with the Seminole tribe for gambling. First of all, that's a major impact for the state of Florida. Tell us a little bit about that, because the legislature has now got to ratify this compact. And how do you see that developing?
That's a $64,000 question. And that actually will come through Regulatory Affairs Committee, which I serve on. Jose Diaz is the chairman of that, and he's been working night and day on that issue. The governor did sign it. And the legislature has to do something. To say there's a variety of interest is an understatement. There's a lot of competing interest on this.
Exactly.
There's a lot of moving parts. What I would like to see in terms of the big picture is parity. So, we're being fair to everybody involved, and those that are in, the gaming atmosphere, if you will. If this group can do something, that group that's in the same space ought to be able to do it. And I know that's a stretch, but there's a lot of that going on. There's everything from destination resort casinos to the Panhandle slot machines to...
There is so many components to, I think once it opens the door, how best is this gaming compact going to be able to serve the citizens of Florida?
Yeah, in the big picture, it's by any measure, it's a lot of money. And so when you have a lot of money, there's a lot of people that want to get into that. So there's groups out there that just want full-on expansion of gaming.
Right.
I don't support that. I don't think most of my colleagues would support that. But we'll, I guess, stay tuned and we'll see what happens. It's kind of underway right now.
Right.
I'm not in the loop on the day-to-day conversations on that. In the big picture, I'm hearing the kind of the updates. But before we all agree on something, and that's all of us in the House, and that's a tall hill to climb. The Senate has to do the same, and then the governor has to agree. So the jury's a little bit still out on that. I trust that by the end of the session, we'll be able to come down on something that we can all agree to, because it is something we need to finalize.
And again, sir, we'll welcome you back to give us the update on how that has progressed. But one of the things I'd like for you to take a moment on, and I think this is a wonderful bill that you're sponsoring, because not only everybody knows of your support for veterans, and over the years. But you're sponsoring a bill that's going to be recognizing Bronze Star recipients. First of all, tell us a little bit about that bill and why was it important to you?
Well, obviously veterans are very important to us, and I and my colleagues have a tremendous amount of respect for the sacrifices they've made and what they do every day to protect our freedoms in our country and our livelihoods. I was made aware that the Bronze Star, which is a very important recognition, sure, for over and above service, was not recognized in terms of license plate. We had the Purple Heart, and we have some other things, which are all very good initiatives. But I recognized through some of my veteran friends that this particular one wasn't. So we've put a bill together to include them, the Bronze Star recipients, in terms of license plate.
Excellent.
in the specialty plate program. So it's not a hard thing for me to support because it's just the right thing to do. I'm sure my colleagues will agree, but for whatever reason, it hadn't happened until now, so we hope to fix that this year.
I think that's a great, effort to do that, and, and your continued support for veterans that have served the country. And I think it's one of those things that, people throughout the state who are the recipients of Bronze Stars will deeply appreciate. Representative Boyd, unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, and I want to give you an opportunity to give us the long view here. In just a couple of days, you'll be traveling to Tallahassee. You've been working pretty much nonstop, trying through committees and special sessions. But give us your impression of what you would like to see this legislative session do at the end of the day. Last year session, kind of ended abruptly, and there were some bruised feelings all around.
Yeah.
But you don't see that on the horizon, do you? And where do you see this where would you like this legislative session to do at the end of the day?
Well, what I like and where I see, I think I really do believe those two will collide and will end very, very well in March. This past session was unusual. We had some conflict, and I don't like that. I don't think my colleagues in the Senate liked it either, because at the end of the day, we're not serving our constituents when we're, at conflict. So the good thing is I've talked to a number of senators who I consider friends. They've talked to a number of House members who they consider friends. We've all agreed that, look, this is the year we've got to get things done and we've got to work together. I think the governor's office is on the same page. And that doesn't mean we're all going to agree on everything, and nor should we, because that's democracy. We have to have that debate and that tension to make sure we're doing the right thing. And every bill that comes before the legislature shouldn't pass.
Right.
So I expect that we'll have a good session. It's going to be busy. We'll have committee weeks up through probably January, maybe early into February with the bigger committees. But then we'll start to just get to the floor more often and try to get things accomplished. So, budget's going to be a tough issue. This Seminole gaming and the gaming issue is going to be a big issue.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think we're all going to be able to come out of Tallahassee having passed a good budget, funding the right things that we really need to fund to make Florida the best place to live and work and play. And I believe there'll be a lot of interest on both sides of the rotunda in doing that this year. So I'm very optimistic. I'm excited. It's always fun to get up there and kind of get in the game and make things move. And I'm looking forward to it. And it's going to be fast and furious. But we asked for the job, so by no means are we complaining. It's just I think it's going to be a very good session. I really have good feelings about it.
Well, Representative Boyd, we'd welcome you back at any time to come back, give us an update, give this community an update on those efforts. And again, your leadership and stewardship, up in Tallahassee serves this community very well.
Thank you.
I think people have said, and we've heard it throughout this community, that we don't consider you a politician, but more of a public servant. And you continue to do that for the citizens of Manatee County.
You're very kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you back real soon.
Thanks, Charles.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Legislative Update.